just delighted to have you join us and to be working with you. I'm also really delighted actually to be introducing Professor Banji Akintoye. I'm going to unmute him just to make sure that he is actually here. What is so special about the Yoruba World Congress that we're welcoming in today is that in many ways it's a new initiative. There's been a movement for the self-determination of the Yoruba people for many, many years, but just recently this World Congress met and formed around the leadership of Professor Akintoye, and it seeks to represent all of the people of Yoruba with a very diverse membership within the Yoruba people. And for us, it's just wonderful to see a movement being developed like the World Yoruba Congress under the leadership of Professor Akintoye, who is really a very well regarded and highly known person within his community. And so I'm just delighted to have you join us and to join the UNPO. So the floor is over to you, sir.
I want to start by thanking UNPO for giving me the opportunity to speak up for the Yoruba nation. Today, we, the Yoruba nation, we also call ourselves the Odua nation. When in 1914 the British amalgamated the Yoruba indigenous nation with other nations to form the country called Nigeria, the Yoruba nation was the largest single nationality in the new country and already had more than 1,000 years of formal civilization building in Black Africa. The Yoruba had started to live in towns and cities by the 9th century AD. By the time that the first European explorers came to the coast of West Africa in the 15th century, Yoruba land was already a copiously urbanized country. Indeed, one of the most urbanized countries in the world, with heavily populated cities and towns at short distances from one another. In the context of this urban civilization, we Yoruba evolved advanced economic, cultural, political, and religious systems. Earliest Europeans explorers and traders along the West African coast from the late 15th century found the influence of Yoruba civilization and Yoruba diaspora trading colonies among many West African peoples, and the Yoruba language as a language of commerce among many different peoples. With the coming of Christian evangelism and Western education in the mid-19th century, Yoruba urban civilization immediately enabled Yoruba land to benefit more than other parts of Black Africa. By the 1860s, we Yoruba were already producing a class of university graduates and educated professionals. The first newspaper in Black Africa was published in the Yoruba city of Abeokuta in 1859, and other newspapers were soon published in other Yoruba cities. For much of the rest of Black Africa, schools did not come until after 1900, by which time some Yoruba families were already producing their third generation of university graduates. At the amalgamation in 1914, the Yoruba were the only educated nation in the new country of Nigeria. From 1952 to 1962, under a limited self-government arrangement and federal constitution, which the British granted to Nigeria, the Yoruba nation proceeded to make the mostly Yoruba western region of Nigeria the pace setter in Nigeria and even in Africa in virtually all aspects of development and modernization. But the Nigerian environment has consistently been hazardous to the Yoruba nation. From the beginning, the British colonial rulers feared the considerably educated and culturally sophisticated Yoruba and proceeded to do everything to limit their influence in Nigeria. From the British, the tradition passed on to the non-Yoruba peoples of Nigeria that the Yoruba needed to be stopped and, quote, to stop the Yorubas, unquote, became the constant purpose of Nigeria. At Nigeria's independence in 1960, the British manipulated everything to impose the Hausa Fulani of northern Nigeria as the dominant group over the Nigerian federal government and to exclude the Yoruba leadership from the federal government. The British regarded the mostly uneducated Hausa Fulani, particularly the Fulani, as, quote, the friendly people, unquote, under whom British influence will continue to be strong in independent Nigeria. In 1962, less than 2 years into Nigeria's independence, the anti-Yoruba hostility finally produced a covert operation by the federal government of Nigeria, assisted by the British from the sidelines, to destabilize the predominantly Yoruba Western region. The covert operation succeeded in splitting the reputedly disciplined Yoruba political leadership of the Western region, and the federal government immediately rushed in, declared that law and order had broken down in the Western region, suspended the region's elected government, imposed a hand-picked sole administrator on the region, and imprisoned the topmost Yoruba leader. Finally, the federal government chose a faction of the disgraced Yoruba leadership as federal allies and proceeded to give them the legitimacy by blatantly rigging the regional election of 1965 for them in their favor. At that point, Yoruba youths of the Western region revolted, and they kept on stubbornly fighting the authorities until law and order totally collapsed in the Western region, and until the whole of Nigeria became profoundly destabilized. In January 1966, the Nigerian military, very displeased with the way the Western region was being handled, overthrew the governments of the Federation. For 3 decades after that, until 1999, Nigeria reeled in a dark and darkening cloud under military dictatorships. All the military coups, all the military dictatorships from 1966 July until 1999 were led by military officers from northern Nigeria. This was so because the northern political elite, whom the British had manipulated into dominance over Nigeria at independence, had used their control of federal power to ensure a dominant number of northern officers in the military ranks. Under the successive military dictatorships, Nigeria descended deeper and deeper into crookedness, insensitive governance, rampant corruption, impunity, government's effort to impose a religion, religious and inter-ethnic violence, insecurity, grossly poor and incompetent management of the economy, and hopeless poverty. The military dictatorships destroyed the essence of federalism, grabbed all power and all resource control into the hands of the federal government, turned the state governments of the Federation into helpless dependents on federal handouts, and thus destroyed the spirit of development and enterprise in all parts of Nigeria. Today, Nigeria is known as the #1 home of extreme poverty in the world. And there are predictions that in a few years, as much as 50% of all the most desperately poor people in the world will be Nigerians. Since the controllers of federal authority were consistently northern Muslims, the ambition grew among them to impose Islam upon Nigeria, a country with large numbers of Muslim, Christian, and traditional worshippers. They thereby led Nigeria into frequent Islamic fundamentalist explosions. The massive revenues being earned in these years by Nigeria from the petroleum exports turned out to be a curse rather than a blessing. Inevitably, the Yoruba nation was sucked into this deepening disaster. The military dictatorship seized important Yoruba assets that had been created in 1959-52 era in the Western region. Most of such assets were then poorly managed or deliberately allowed to decline or even perish. Deepening poverty became the lot of the Yoruba nation in Nigeria. Also, Yoruba political leadership increasingly fell for most of the insensitive governance and public corruption characteristic of Nigeria. In these circumstances, the Yoruba people have progressively lost the enterprising spirit and the spirit of service to society for which their nation has been known throughout its long history. The quality of Yoruba education has been destroyed. Yoruba language has declined and now faces the threat of extinction. To destroy Yoruba knowledge of and pride in their history, Nigeria's federal military government prohibited the teaching of history in schools. Yoruba rulers have neglected agriculture until farming came to have among them the image of an occupation fit only for the aged, the poor, and the illiterate, and until Yoruba land came to depend mostly on food importations. By 1962, cocoa export by Yoruba farmers were the source of funding for the Western region's ambitious development programs and the main foreign exchange source for Nigeria. By the early 1980s, Yoruba cocoa exports had dwindled almost to zero. With the economy depressed, unemployment has escalated relentlessly among educated Yoruba youths, forcing many to go into crimes, into drug abuse, and into criminal courts, and forcing many more to flee to other countries in the world. Yoruba youths are regularly many among West African youths who in desperation attempt to reach Southern Europe through the Sahara Desert and the Mediterranean Sea, and who frequently die in droves in the desert and in the sea. The Yoruba people are experiencing a degree of poverty, of loss of morale, of hopelessness, and of disorientation unknown in their history. In spite of their very strong cultural unity, and in spite of their unity around many other exalted principles, the Yoruba almost constantly look disunited and conflict-prone in Nigeria. Largest in population in Nigeria and in Africa, the most educated people in Nigeria and in Africa. And a nation with a very large diaspora in most countries of the world. The Yoruba do often appear like a small and impotent group in Nigeria. The Nigerian experience now confronts the Yoruba with the probability of a devastating revolt among the huge masses of their educated but unemployed and neglected youths. Ultimately, the worst degradation suffered by the Yoruba nation in Nigeria is that since 2015, Heavily armed Fulani herdsmen and militias from northwestern Nigeria have been coming to Yoruba land, rampaging, destroying farms and villages, killing rural folks, threatening to conquer the Yoruba nation, to seize land all over Yoruba land, even to banish the Yoruba nation from their homeland, and to bring Fulani folks from other countries of West Africa to seize and possess land in Yoruba land. Many Yoruba people have been forced to abandon farming altogether, and the rampages are putting unbelievable pressure on the already weakened Yoruba economy in general. Even the large Yoruba cities have come under these threats also, as millions of uneducated and unskilled youths are being deliberately encouraged and assisted by some in the northern elite to migrate to the Yoruba southwest, where they are building up into a devastating burden on Yoruba society and economy. Countless Yoruba patriots and civil organizations and the patriots and organizations of most other Nigerian peoples have bravely agitated for decades for a return to a truly federal system. But the people who control the central government have stubbornly employed the central government's power to prevent such restructuring. The horrific conditions of Nigeria are intensifying abominably. Human blood is flowing increasingly across the face of Nigeria. United Nations and other international agencies and countless informed Nigerians are loudly predicting Nigeria's imminent descent into famine and starvation, insupportable weight of foreign debt, total economic collapse, and even an apocalyptic implosion, which could spew ruin and human suffering over most of West Africa. Most of Yoruba people have now given up on the agitation for restructuring and have moved to the position that the Nigerian situation should be sorted out by peaceful and friendly negotiations, which will enable the Yoruba nation, as well as other nations that so choose, to retrieve their self-determination and to pursue in their own way their political, economic, and cultural stabilization, progress, and prosperity. The Yoruba World Congress, which I have the honor to lead, and which consists of thousands of Yoruba men and women at home in Nigeria and in the Yoruba diaspora in most countries of the world, has stepped boldly forward to motivate the Yoruba people to defend their homeland and to prepare themselves for the accomplishment of their nation's ultimate goal of self-determination and prosperity. We Yoruba World Congress are an umbrella organization of hundreds of Yoruba civic organizations at home in Nigeria and in most countries of the world. We are working to empower our Yoruba youths to turn to productive enterprises and to begin to transform their lives. We are working with competent scholars of language to revive the Yoruba language. We are engaging in occasional schools aimed at regenerating Yoruba civility and common spirit and community spirit. Some of our related organizations are beginning to plan a Yoruba referendum. Though our Yoruba Congress is Yoruba World Congress is less than 1 year old, and even though we are known to be faithfully committed to peaceful activities and peaceful purposes, the Nigerian government has already begun to take action against us. This past week, the Nigerian Director of State Security announced that all organizations like ours have been removed from the list of state-registered organizations, and that the security forces will soon are preparing to clamp down on the members of such organizations. So it is a great thing that at this point, when the Yoruba struggle for liberation and self-determination is reaching these heights and looking forward with hope, it's a great thing that we have the opportunity to be working with the UNPO. We are committed to peaceful means only, and we will not. It is part of our constitution that we will not let any situation or condition whatsoever push us into violent action. That's our decision. And we believe, the important thing is that we believe that peaceful means can achieve the purpose for which we stand. And that in the company of other nations in the UNPO, we will be able to achieve our purposes peacefully. I thank you all. I thank you on behalf of the Yoruba Nation. And I thank you on behalf of the Yoruba World Congress. Thank you very much.
Thank you for watching. If you're new to this channel, consider subscribing so you won't miss out any of our latest video.
My name is Aki Anabi. I'm a video director and TV producer of Akomolowe on African Magic. Keep watching Drive TV.
Olólùfẹ́ Drive TV àti gbogbo ẹ̀yin tí Fẹ́mi Sola ẹ máa wo Drive TV. Keep watching Drive TV.
My name is Wole Agba. Taking this time out to tell you all that you keep watching Drive TV. What drive ẹ̀wọ̀n ní ògo ẹ̀? What drive ẹ̀wọ̀n fulfilment? What drive ẹ̀wọ̀n ní tó bá lọ? Ó ní iṣẹ́ rìn. Ibi ni kò máa wò Drive TV. Thank you. Chloe.
Drive TV, driving you around the world.